This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. It's July 27th, and on this day in 1993, Boston Celtic Reggie Lewis died. Reggie Lewis loved playing basketball. He was just 27, been in the league 6 years. He was kind of coming into his own. The past 2 seasons, he'd scored nearly 21 a game. He was going to be a part of returning the Boston Celtics to the championship banner-hanging franchise they had been. He loved Boston, had gone to college at Northeastern, blessed to be picked by the Celtics in the first round of the '87 draft. It had been 7 years since they'd won a title. There had never been a drought that long in Boston since they'd won that first one back in 1957. And he was ready to restore the city to greatness. Next year. They'd lost to the Charlotte Hornets in the first round of the playoffs 2.5 months before. Of course, that had been when he'd known something was not quite right. In Game 1 of that series, Reggie had started the game on fire, scoring 10 of the Celtics' first 16 points in the first quarter. And then things started to turn dim.
All of a sudden hitting the deck is Reggie Lewis. Is he all right? Inside to Perry. He's down right now. Yeah, he's hurt.
He was able to walk off the floor on his own. He felt dizzy, and he couldn't quite catch his breath there for a moment. He got checked out, and he was cleared to go back in. He played another few minutes, scored an additional 7 points, and then he sat the rest of the game out. He was taken to a local Boston hospital and was diagnosed with focal cardiomyopathy, which is a thickening of the heart. It causes the heart to have a harder time pumping blood to the rest of the body, which can lead to heart failure. The doctor told him the bad news that it was likely career-ending. How could that be? He'd just been scorching the Hornets. He'd felt fine until he didn't. Surely the doctor had to be wrong. And the team took a very cautious approach. Dave Gavitt, then the CEO of the Celtics, said after Game 1 that they were not going to rush Reggie back to the court.
It's a scary thing to the player and everyone who's involved. The bottom line is that there are 2 benchmarks that have to be passed before Reggie plays. The first is a medical benchmark that the doctors will provide to him, and the second is his own.
The Celtics won Game 1, but without Reggie in the lineup, lost their next 3, and the Celtics' 1993 season was over. It's understandable that Reggie wanted a second opinion. It's always a good idea to get another doctor to run some tests and see what conclusion they come to. When he got his second opinion, that doctor diagnosed neurocardiogenic syncope, which is a much less severe situation, and it would allow Lewis to continue playing basketball. That's what Lewis was doing on this day at the Celtics practice facility in Waltham. He wasn't doing anything too strenuous yet. He was just shooting some baskets, getting ready to play in a pickup game with some local college kids. Nothing organized by the Celtics. He just wanted to see how he felt. One witness in the gym that night remembered Reggie smiling and happy to be back on the court. The next time that person looked Reggie's way, he had collapsed. When folks got to him, he was gasping for air, and then he stopped breathing altogether. Paramedics got to him quickly and took him to Waltham Weston Hospital. He was pronounced dead at 7:30 that night. It was a devastating loss, just 7 years after the tragic death of Len Bias. The last NBA game that Reggie played in, he and the Celtics players had been wearing a black band on their jerseys to honor the passing of longtime Boston broadcaster Johnny Most. When they started the season later on in '93, they'd be wearing a black band in honor of Reggie Lewis. The Celtics retired his number 35 in 1995, raising it to the rafters of the Boston Garden. On this day in 1999, Detroit Lions running back Barry Sanders retired. It was a shock to most football fans and the people of Detroit. He was coming off of a 1,500-yard season. Sure, he hadn't scored a ton, just 4 touchdowns, but he was on a team that really wasn't that good, wrapping up a disappointing 5-11 season. He was only a year removed from leading the league with 2,053 yards rushing to go along with 14 touchdowns. He was still the Barry Sanders capable of shaking linebackers and DBs out of their jocks, ripping off 50 or 60-yard TD runs. In his 10 years in the league, he had not had a single season when he rushed for less than 1,100 yards, and the year he ran for only, and I say only there because it's friggin' Barry Sanders, but the year he ran for 1,115 yards, he'd missed the final 5 games due to injury. He was probably just one decent year away from becoming the NFL's all-time leading rusher. But all that stuff was important to other people. It was not important to Barry Sanders. Back in his rookie season, he had been in a position to break the rookie rushing record, and the coaches wanted to put him back in to do that. The game had been decided. The Lions were going to win it. But Barry said, "Nah, I don't want to do that." So he didn't. Also, it did not take a crystal ball or a deck of tarot cards to see that the Lions were not going to a Super Bowl anytime soon. If they had been in a spot to climb that mountain, then maybe he would have stuck around another year or two. But as Sanders saw it, they were heading back into a rebuilding year, and he wasn't wrong. He talked about how the fire and the passion just weren't there anymore. And so Barry Sanders made a decision for what was best for Barry Sanders and retired on this day as one of the all-time greats, while leaving a lot of what-ifs floating around in the ether. This episode is brought to you by Firefly Books, and with you being a sports fan just like me, here's 2 suggestions for your next great sports read. If you love basketball, then you need to add Dave Zarum's book, NBA 75, The Definitive History. Uncover untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. From the league's humble beginnings to its modern glory, it is a courtside seat to 75 years of NBA history. And if you're a golf fanatic, then you gotta check out Matt Adams' book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget. I've used it as a reference in this podcast over the past year for lots of stories that I've done, and I can tell you from experiencing it, this is a great book. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. It's the closest you'll ever get to walking the fairways with the greatest to ever play the game. Grab your copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available from Firefly, wherever you get your books. On this day in 1988, New York Yankee pitcher Tommy John set a record that he wishes he hadn't. The Yankees were at home that day playing the Milwaukee Brewers. John got the start, and with 1 out in the 4th inning, the Yankees were cruising up 4-0. John walked Jim Gantner, bringing Jeffrey Leonard to the plate. John threw him a slider just off the plate that Leonard managed to get the end of the bat on, squirting it down the first base line. John jumped off the mound and said his first mistake was trying to barehand the ball. He had never really done that, but he tried it on this play, and he bobbled it. Well, that was error number 1 because with the juggle, he would not have been able to get Leonard at first. But he threw it to first anyway, and it whizzed past Don Mattingly into foul territory down the right field line. That was error number 2. The ball caromed off the wall and rolled to Dave Winfield, who barehanded it and threw a perfect strike to home, but John cut it off and then tried to relay it home. The throw to the plate was wild, and the ball rolled into the Brewers' dugout, which allowed Leonard to score. Error number 3. So a little squibber up the line that slowly rolled about 30 feet turned into 2-run scoring with 3 errors on the play. Tommy John is the only player to have accomplished that ignominious feat. He did have a great sense of humor about it, though. When he got back to the dugout, he shouted, "Guys, look, I've got 3 more errors in me. Let's get our butts out there and let's start hitting the ball so my next 3 won't make a tie game out of it." Well, that cracked everybody up, but they did get their bats going. The Yankees went on to beat the Brewers 16-3, with Tommy pitching 8 complete. A year earlier, in 1987 on this day, it was the end of a legendary streak. This was a game between the Salt Lake City Trappers and the Billings, Montana Mustangs in a Pioneer League game. The Pioneer League was a rookie league, so guys right out of college starting on the lowest rung. They played a limited 70-game schedule. The Trappers were the only team in the Pioneer League that was not affiliated with a major league team and was made up of undrafted players and cast-offs that just liked to play ball and keep the dream alive. The actor Bill Murray, musician Huey Lewis, the clown prince of baseball Max Patkin, and legendary drummer Mick Fleetwood all owned a small stake in this team. And after every win, they'd step down the street and celebrate at Duffy's Pub despite it being in a heavily Mormon city. They did a lot of celebrating in 1987. The Trappers won 29 consecutive games, but that ended on this night when Billings scored 6 runs in the first, added 1 more later, and hung on for the 7-5 win, ruining the Trappers' perfect July. The Trappers caught the attention of national media, including ESPN, that followed their success. The 29-game professional baseball winning streak topped the 85-year-old record of 27, set by the Corsicana Oilers of the Texas League. The team no longer exists as the Trappers. Dirks Field, where the Trappers played, has been torn down. The team moved a few times before landing in Ogden, Utah in 1994, and they are now the Ogden Raptors. And on this day in 2006, cyclist Floyd Landis was put on notice that a sample taken after his incredible Stage 17 ride in the Tour de France came back positive for high levels of testosterone. He swore his innocence and demanded the B sample be tested. When it later came back positive as well, his cycling team Phonak released him and he was suspended from cycling. The samples came back with a ratio of testosterone to epitestosterone of 11-1. The max allowed was 4-1, and the typical male ratio is 1-1. Stage 17 had been an epic performance by Landis. The day prior to that stage, he had lost the yellow jersey when he blew up on the final climb, dropping out of the top 10 and 8 minutes behind the new leader. So in Stage 17, Landis attacked early, rode the final mountain stage of the Alps with 5 huge climbs alone, and soloed to the stage win, clawing back 7 minutes of his deficit. Now, at the time, it felt like it was a too-good-to-be-true moment, but watching the coverage that day, they actually had Alan Lim, his coach, talking about how it was possible considering his power numbers and his sheer desire. And so it got us all to believe that maybe we were watching something magical. Instead, it was more medical than anything. And it all came crashing down on Floyd Landis on this day in 2006. Time now for today's Nothing to Do with Sports Did You Know? Listerine may not be the best tasting mouthwash, but at least it's better than what the Romans used. Due to the amount of ammonia, which is a good cleaning agent, the ancients used stale urine as a mouthwash.
What did you say?
Not certain why it was in short supply back then, but apparently it was, so much so that a tax was levied on its purchase. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.